by the soldiers on both sides, and learn about the great battles that made this our country's bloodiest conflict.
Many were terribly wounded, some with legs shot off.
Listen to the voices of Sam Waterston, Morgan Freeman, Julie Harris, and other great performers as they tell the story of the struggle that affects the world even today. Don't miss this epic series from Academy Award nominee Ken Burns, The Civil War.
Watch 5 consecutive nights beginning August 8th at 9.
Few things are more important than your health, so make Health Matters a habit. See it Saturday evenings at 5:30. You're watching WTVS, Channel 56 in Detroit.
Good evening. I'm Roger Mudd in New York.
And I'm Jim Lehrer in Washington. After our summary of the news this Thursday, we have excerpts from the House debate on the budget compromise, followed by analysis from Mark Shields, joined tonight by Cato Byrne and David Broder. Then we look at the State Department flap over U.S. Bosnia policy, and Jeffrey Kay reports on the sentencing of the 2 police officers in the Rodney King case.
Major funding for the MacNeil-Lehrer News Hour has been provided by PepsiCo. PepsiCo. And by the Archer Daniels Midland Company. ADM, supermarket to the world. And by New York Life. Yet another example of New York Life's wise investment philosophy. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the annual financial support from viewers like you.
The budget debate moved to the floor of the House of Representatives today. The plan would cut some $496 billion from the budget deficit over 5 years. Democratic leaders predicted it will win approval sometime this evening, but they were reported to be scrambling for wavering votes. President Clinton did the same thing. Throughout the day, he phoned lawmakers lobbying for the bill's passage. Later, at a photo opportunity, he told reporters what he had been saying.
This is the beginning, not the end, of our efforts to have responsible budgeting. There will be one more round of budget cuts. There will be the unveiling of the Vice President's report on reinventing government, which will have billions of dollars in further savings that can be achieved. There will be the opportunity to control health care costs in the context of the health care reform bill in a way that will not be unfair to older people on Medicare. So what I'm suggesting to them is that this is clearly the best chance for real deficit reduction, for a fair apportionment of spending cuts and revenue increases, and for an economic plan that will grow the economy.
The House passed an earlier version of the bill by a 6-vote margin. Here's a sample of today's debate.
Mr. Speaker, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will face a big decision today. Should they vote for the largest retroactive tax increase in history, or should they vote for the American taxpayer? I feel like the Wendy's lady, you know, the one who opened up the hamburger and said, "Where's the beef?" Well, I open up the tax package and say, "Where are the spending cuts?" There's no spending cuts. There's no beef, but there's plenty of pork. Now, shouldn't that go first?
The fact is, we have a plan that reduces the deficit by $496 billion, mainly through spending cuts, that restores tax fairness, and that lays a solid foundation for economic growth. There is no alternative before us that even comes close. This is the plan. This is the time. Let's get the job done.
The Senate is expected to vote tomorrow. We will have more from the House, plus some analysis right after this news summary. Roger?
The Senate has approved $5.8 billion in relief for the victims of the Midwest flooding. The bill passed last night is more than double the amount the president originally requested. The extra money would go to farmers for crop losses. The Senate bill must now be reconciled with a $3 billion version passed by the House last week. Although river levels were dropping in most of the Midwest, the Mississippi River was expected to crest today at the historic town of St. Genevieve, Missouri. Officials said the river would reach about 49 feet, just 2 feet below levees protecting the town. Workers spent the day reinforcing those levees to prevent them from being breached. There was some good news on the manufacturing sector in the economy today when the Commerce Department reported orders to U.S. factories jumped 2.6% in June. That was the best gain of the year for factory orders, which had declined in each of the 3 previous months.
A gunman opened fire at a federal courthouse in Topeka, Kansas today. A security guard was killed, 3 others were wounded. Police sealed off the building, and an FBI SWAT team was called in. But several hours later, they found the man inside, dead of a gunshot wound to the head. Before going in, he apparently set off a bomb in a parking lot outside. The man was identified as Jack Gary McKnight. He was to have been sentenced today on drug and firearms charges.
The Bosnian Serbs, under Western pressure, offered today to lift their siege of Sarajevo and open 2 key roads into the city. Serbian forces have besieged the city for more than a year, and just yesterday said they had captured strategic high ground on Mount Igman overlooking the city. But the Serb leader, fresh from peace talks in Geneva, met just outside Sarajevo this morning with his top general and said their troops would withdraw from Mount Igman and another mountain seized this week. UN officials said the withdrawals would begin tomorrow. Bosnia's Muslim president boycotted the Geneva talks for 3 days because of the Serbian advance on Sarajevo, and NATO warned it would launch airstrikes to break the siege. The State Department's desk officer on Bosnia has resigned to protest U.S. policy in Bosnia. Marshal Freeman Harris today said he disagreed with the decision to use airstrikes, and he accused the Clinton administration of putting undue pressure on the Bosnian government to break up the country. We'll have more on that story later in the program.
Secretary of State Christopher will talk to NATO commanders about airstrikes against Serb positions in Bosnia. He is expected to hold those talks tomorrow at a U.S. air base in Italy after finishing his Middle East trip. He claimed progress on that mission, which took him to Israel and Jordan today. We have a report narrated by Vera Frankel of Worldwide Television News.
Christopher arrived at Rabin's office after meeting the chief Palestinian negotiator, Faisal Husseini. Christopher is trying to break the deadlock in Palestinian-Israeli talks on interim self-government for the Palestinians. This was Christopher's second meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister in 2 days. The most important item on the agenda was the outcome of Christopher's talks in Damascus the previous day with President Hafez Assad. Syria had asked for more active U.S. mediation in the peace process. Rabin said the news from Damascus was encouraging.
I believe that you have brought certain good news. It's only the beginning. We still have a long way to go. I appreciate your efforts, and thank you very much.
I don't want to get into the substance of any of the discussions. I'll simply say that I think that it's accurate that the peace process has been salvaged and is back on track.
Christopher's next stop was Amman, Jordan. His meeting with King Hussein was largely a diplomatic courtesy. It's believed the only obstacle to an announcement of Jordanian-Israeli agreement is Jordan's hesitation to go ahead before the Palestinians and Israelis agree. Back in Israel, Christopher confirmed he would revisit Damascus on Friday to help bridge the gap between Israeli and Syrian positions.
2 more American soldiers were wounded in Somalia today. Officials said their convoy was ambushed by Somali gunmen about 50 miles west of Mogadishu. The area is controlled by warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid, who remains a fugitive from UN forces. There have been 7 U.S. casualties in Somalia in the past 2 days.
2 huge explosions killed about